Hello, colleagues and friends. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on what part of our beautiful planet you are joining us from. So, today's topic is music, and I have chosen one particular aspect of music, which is its writing, the writing of music, also connected to such designations as sheet music, music notation, and music scores. So, let's explore these terms that revolve around the writing of music. First of all, we have this music notation. Well, music notation is a very general thing to describe the system or systems devised to represent the raw material of music, the sounds of music, into symbols that can be both written and read and written. Secondly, sheet music. This is a more familiar term for many of us. Well, basically, it makes a distinction between what is recorded music or live music from other from the music that is recorded on paper or various other digital formats that are available today. As you can see in this image, very interestingly, now these musicians in this orchestra are not using actual paper but digital devices, but that would be considered, technically speaking, as sheet music. That's what it is. Thirdly, music scores. When someone speaks of music scores, well, they are basically talking about the parts of a large arrangement of an orchestra or a big band, and the conductor or the band leader has the score in front of them, and the players only have access to their individual parts. So that's the distinction between those terms. I don't know how many among you are musicians, but even if you are not one, there is a good chance that you might have had the opportunity to come across one of those pieces of paper that musicians read, whereby the music is deciphered, so to speak, into the music itself, right? Very much like the way translators do their job, the musician transfers the information that's on paper into their instrument or their voice. That's in the case of singers. And I want to make an analogy here, and I want us to think about language, the actual language. I mean, the language of words and phrases, sentences, that language that we use in interpreting, for example, and the ideas that are conveyed sometimes more effectively than others. I'm going to call that the word language, as opposed to the language of music. Why am I making this distinction? Well, because I've heard some people referring to music as language, which I am a kind of reluctant. I'm torn here, and this is a personal opinion, but I don't necessarily think that music is a language. You have to think of the example of, imagine a pianist giving his concert, and at the end of his concert, of his musical interpretation, his performance, he turns to the audience and he asks the question, did you all understand? I mean, was the message clear? Did you get what I was trying to say? So we all know that it does not necessarily make a good example. I mean, so I guess you get the point. To me, language is more of an artistic expression. Probably it conveys some emotions, but it would be very difficult to actually um, give the one musical piece a particular value that is equally relevant for all of us, or that conveys the same type of emotion. Okay, so let me now jump to another question. Um, and look at this image. Well, believe it or not, this is music notation. This is not probably the kind of music notation that we are all used to seeing, or that some of us have seen at some point. This happens to be, well, this is in fact Tibetan music notation. Don't ask me how this system works. I just chose this image because that's what it represents. It represents music notation for the Tibetans. I don't exactly know what time this particular document dates from, but it represents music. Here you have images of more standard. There are some random images of more standard kinds of music notations that you might be familiar with. And now let's go to the question of what is the oldest piece of music that is written. Um, when we see all this intricate system, particularly in this image, right, of language, in any piece, all those dots and sticks and squiggles and dashes and the lines and fragments and little pieces of Italian language as well, right? We begin to wonder, when was this system invented? This is a system that goes back to the 1500s or 1600s. And this was a time when instrumental music was on the rise, most particularly in Western Europe. The musicians needed something concrete in front of them to communicate pitch and rhythm. Of course, well, as you might infer, this is not the oldest kind of music notations in existence. Those dots and dashes and the squiggles and all the things that you have seen here were first devised, of the first forms of this system were devised by a gentleman by the name of Guido d'Arezzo. Here is his picture. Look at the portrait of Guido d'Arezzo. And here is another one. This happened, he lived in the year 1000, around the year 1000 of the Common Era. That was roughly 1022 years ago. So it's up to you to decide which of those images best represents or depicts the features of Mr. Guido d'Arezzo. He was a monk and a musical theorist. He also devised, well, a system that is a kind of that facilitated things for musicians at the time. And this system developed into what today you might have, well, children learn at school often, and you might have come across, which is the tonic solfa system or the do-re-mi system. And that was a long way back in history, but not the first type of musical notation. Liturgical notation, let's go for the church music that was dominant in dominant genre in Europe in the Middle Ages. And most of this music, well, all of it, basically all of this church music was sung. This music was noted using a system that came into being about in the year 800 of our era, Common Era, 800 AD, and it used something that is called Neumes. I want to give you an image of what that is, have an idea. These are graphical shapes that indicate the contour of a melodic line, but the system doesn't notate the precise pitches. It was used for the early liturgical music, such as in Gregorian chant. You might be familiar with that. Yeah, we're talking about the year 800 of our era. Now we are going back to the further back in time, to the ancient world. There is evidence of written music recorded in ancient Greece and Byzantium, which is the current Turkey. But now I want to take you to Syria. And one particular person, an important person, that is Richard J. Dumbrill, who is a British archaeomusicologist. Archaeomusicologist means the study of old, very ancient music. He's also a pianist, composer, and conductor. Dumbrill is a relativist musicologist who opposes universalism and Occicentrism. And Occicentrism, for your information, is a worldview that is centered on Western civilization. It's also a biased view that favors it over non-Western civilizations. So this is a picture of Mr. Dumbrill playing with one of his instruments that attempt to recreate what he believes, or, well, for whatever research results he might have come up with, trying to recreate the sounds of the music that was played many hundreds of years ago. So a piece of music that exists today, that was written or rather carved into stone, dates from between 16 to 1400 BC. That means approximately 3,600 years ago. And this particular piece of music is called the Hymn to Nikkal, who was a goddess of orchards in that part of the world. We're talking about the current Syria, the present day Syria. And this hymn, this piece of music, was probably intended to be sung to help good harvests. And well, that's what it is. And it's thought to be the earliest piece of written music in existence. The shapes and instructions on a stone tablet from the mists of time that showed how music could be recorded. And in so doing, it shaped a whole tradition that continues today. Now, should you be interested in the maybe should you be interested in developing, or should you be given the work or the task, the job of creating a way to record music, you need to consider four important things, which are called the qualities of sound. The qualities of sound that are four of them. The first one is pitch. I will show you this. Oh, sorry, I forgot to show you the stone tablet or the slate where this hymn to Nikkal was carved into, was written. Here it is, interesting image. Don't ask me what the methods that Mr. Dumbrill used in order to decipher all these symbols, signs, and squiggles. And pitch. The first quality of sound is pitch, and it has to do with the register, or let's say how low or how high a sound is. Pitch deals with the frequency of a sound wave vibration. For example, a large instrument like a tuba produces low pitch sounds and vibrate slowly. Whereas a piccolo, for example, if you're familiar with that, which is a small flute, produces high pitch sounds. A better way to understand pitch would be comparing the voice of a child or maybe a baby. Well, that type of sound is a high pitch sound. Compare it to the voice of a very probably bulky old man. His voice is going to be low pitched. Here you see the stuff. This image that I'm showing right now shows you the stuff, which, well, intuitively you will think that the sounds that are high pitch go in the upper part of the staff, and you will indicate the lower sounds, the lower sound pitch on the lower part of the staff. So up and down. That's basically the representation of pitch. The second quality of sound that you need to take into account when devising your own system of music notation is duration, which, well, I think the word is self-explanatory, was the length of a sound. And that is represented by what some people call shapes or also notes. In this graph, and just for the sake of the argument, because I know that, well, not all of us here are musicians, let's take, for instance, this symbol here. This is kind of round with two things on the sides. And think that let's give this thing a value of 4 seconds. This particular note lasts 4 seconds. So the subsequent notes are going to represent half of that. This one is going to be 2 seconds. This one is going to be 1 second, this one half a second, and so forth and so on. That is duration in music. Thirdly, intensity, how loud or how soft or quiet a sound is. And that also has its representation in this, with these types of symbols that you will also find in sheet music. As I said at the beginning, there were some indications written in Italian piano for describing very soft or very, well, kind of quiet sounds, and F from the Italian forte, which means strong or loud. Here you have these two interesting symbols, crescendo and diminuendo. Crescendo means gradually increasing volume, and diminuendo, well, gradually diminishing volume. So intensity and dynamics, that's basically the description of one of the quality of sounds, which is its intensity. And finally, we have timbre. Timbre is determined basically by the object or the source, the object that is producing the sound, or the source that the sound comes from. And that's how you differentiate, and you know when you are in one room and somebody is playing the piano on the room next door, you will easily yes, understand that a piano is being played as opposed to a trumpet or a clarinet, or whether a friend of yours is speaking, which this person has a very particular color of voice. That's what allows us to differentiate between one voice and the other. So those are the four qualities of sound that you will need to take into account when devising, so to speak, your own system of music notation. And that's all for today from my side. Thank you very much for listening to this speech.